Minneapolis, St. Paul, The Fan.
Wide receiver running and the way he runs and the way he opens up, and every single play seems like he's running full speed and exploding off the ball. To be determined on all that, but we're going to do what's best for Justin and make sure we give him, the treatment and a plan that is a big picture positive for him. He obviously is one of the most, ultra competitors I've ever met, and he was trying to go back in the game as it was. So we're going to have to medically make a good decision and help kind of almost protect him from himself a little bit in a way where we got to take care of him and get him back to 100%.
KOC from his Monday press conference heard on KFAN discussing He's JJ, where Justin's season through 5 games is. It just stops. Stops maybe for 4 or for 4, but could be more than 4. Who knows? And to discuss that and much more is one of the very best, Ben Goessling of the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. And I mean, with Justin or whatever, man, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just the ways and means become rearranged. And those lyrics were sung by noted prophet Daryl Hall circa 1984. And indeed, are prophetic for the 2023 Minnesota Vikings. Ben, again, covers the team for the Strib, and he's joined us to discuss the tumult and confusion and disorder, and now the hamstring situation with Jefferson that has played into the 1-4. But where will the 1-4 go without Justin over the next month? And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's there's a lot percolating at the moment, and certainly none of it terribly encouraging for the Vikings. This thing has turned in a pretty big way here over the first 5 weeks, and this I would think is one of those things that could have a lot of long-term ramifications. It is going to be very, very interesting to me to see how they handle it without Justin and how his camp goes forward with this whole thing. I mean, it's 4 weeks, but it's I wonder over the course of the rest of the year how they will kind of advise him to go about it, knowing that he doesn't have a contract. I think that is certainly something they are going to be keeping in mind with him, and I don't know if that will ultimately hold sway over what he decides to do when he comes back. But I think the long-term focus for both the Vikings and Justin Jefferson has to be, that has to be considered. So I think all of this is, especially if they don't find a way to win without him and keep themselves in the mix, it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle the back half of the season if they're, far enough out of it when he comes back to have those conversations.
Well, with the X's and O's sit down with O'Connell today, the recording that airs tomorrow night, my final 2 questions, at least as of now, before talking about, how about this, Justin Fields, sacked 75 times in 20 games.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 5 this year and 15 last year, but whatever. I'm going to go down that road because, like, the way I'm going to frame it up is given Justin is going to miss time with the hamstring, is this truly a wonderful opportunity for other talented players to steal the show and to grow so the troops are fortified when Justin returns? Set it up that way and then get into, is it fun for Kevin and the staff preparing a game plan truly in a way you never have because of the attention 18 gets.
Well, and he talked about that yesterday, and I wrote about that a little bit this morning. I think if you're looking for any type of a silver lining here, it would maybe be that. I can't think of a way in which you're better without Justin Jefferson on the field than you are with him, but he did talk about that a little bit yesterday, and he's referred to the JJ effect, where they'll scout teams and say, okay, there's 60-70% man coverage, and then they come out and it's cover 2 with a safety over the top of Justin all of the time.
Yeah.
So being able to play teams the way that you scout them may be beneficial, especially if you have a quarterback like the Vikings do, who's not gunslinger guy. He is, I'm going to go through my reads. I'm going to try to decipher coverage and make my decisions as a result of that. If you're looking for any shred of ways in which they can develop the offense and get some other people going. Maybe it's that. I think I'll admit that there's a little bit of a stretch to that, but I think that is certainly their hope in all of this, is that if there's a way through it, it's that you'll get played a little bit more straight as a result of not having Justin Jefferson out there.
Was there any surprise that the move was so quick to get him on IR? And does the 1-4 record play into this at all, where it's like, we can be safe? Where if they're 4-1, or maybe this is even later in the season, a few weeks from now, where the decision now, it was maybe out of convenience, out of safety, and getting him healthy. But any surprise at just almost the immediate, we gotta sit him for 4 weeks? And does their current status play into that at all?
Well, I think it may play into it a little bit, but the overall approach, I think, and he alluded to this yesterday, was you have to take the big picture. He, I think, looked for the big picture positive, is how he put it, on Jefferson. And the fact that he said it, we almost have to protect him from himself, saying he wanted to go back in, or was trying to find a way to go back in, and then they make the decision to keep him out. It does not make any sense for the team to jeopardize his long-term future. And I think that's especially true when you still have to figure out the contract thing. I don't think the Vikings are going to want to do anything rash with a player they are hoping to have a long-term relationship with. And being able to show in this sense that we have his best interest at heart, and we have his best financial interest at heart as a result of that, I'm sure is part of the thinking there. And that's not to say that they are, I don't think they're punting on the season yet. I don't know that the decision is as much about 1-4 as we need to kind of put our best foot forward for the long term with Justin. But, it certainly doesn't urge you to make decisions you might otherwise consider rash when you're 1-4, and you can look at the long term a little bit more.
And we are discussing Justin Jefferson missing at least 4 games, going to injured reserve with his hamstring. We're doing so with Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. Much more on the state of the skull and the National Football League around the corner. But first,
The Fan, along with 2 men in a junk truck, they want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, use the keyword bank. KFAN.com. Hey, that's our own website. The keyword is bank.
FAN, The Fan.
got to be careful with Johnny Pecker. Third down, C.J. Ham to the right of Kirk Cousins. Here comes a blitz up the middle. Cousins fires left. Incomplete off the hands of T.J. Hawkinson at the 11-yard line, and it would have been a first down.
Yeah, I'd rather be with you. I'd rather be with you.
Yeah. 10-20. And drops of footballs have been quite in vogue for the 1-4 bunch. I mean, like last week, another legitimate chance to win and beat a quality squad, and another set of circumstances that beset a team potentially approaching turmoil. Now, JJ's gone for a month, and Ben Goessling's here to chat about that. But like Madison, Hawkinson, Evans, Bynum, Blackman, Addison, and so on, it's most drops of footballs I can remember in my years doing this. And I just wonder how much that out of players, because, and I'm going to bring this up with KOC today, is the last thing you want is them thinking about it during the game. Yeah. But it's clear they are.
Yeah, I don't know how you get it. I mean, you can do the jugs machine, you can do extra throwing, all that stuff during practice, I suppose. I'm not sure how much that will change things on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure players will be on those things, especially defensive backs. It's probably one of those things where they don't do that as much as receivers do. So maybe there's some benefit to that for a guy like Evans, a guy like Blackman that we've seen drop interceptions in the last couple of weeks. But I think some of it is probably just saying, for at least for the receivers, if you're thinking about it, stop and stop trying to over micromanage everything and get back to just saying I'm going to do what I normally do, and this isn't a problem. It's almost, I guess in my mind, it's almost like a hitter sometimes in baseball where they get in a slump and you start to overcorrect. Well, I got to go back and see what I'm doing with my left side and all these different little mechanical things that you do. And sometimes you'll hear guys just say, I went back and watched video of myself from 2 years ago and okay, just see ball, hit ball, and don't worry about the rest of it. So maybe some of it's that.
If the baseball hitter is having that problem on Monday and Tuesday, well, they generally have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on to work around it, work through it, fix it. I mean, in this week-to-week, emotional, physically, it's a violent grind.
Right.
The last thing you want is to be thinking about minutia-related items as you're trying to turn up the field on a beautifully executed screen with Chris Jones about ready to bury a quarterback and Brandon Powell and Garrett Bradbury and Jordan Addison out there blocking up a screen that's a first down for sure. Might have gotten to the house.
Yeah, that one hurt. I mean, that one, the Madison screen, obviously, you're talking about there. He has a big gap there, and I think there's a chance, and we've seen him do it. We saw him do it on Sunday. I think there's a chance he takes that thing to the end zone, and then your tie game and see what happens. That was the series, of course, where they get the pass interference call on L'Jarius Sneed that gets picked up, and then they turn the ball over as a result of the incomplete pass. So if Madison at least gets a first down there, if not gets into the end zone, you're either tie game or in position to tie it up there. So, yeah, that one hurt quite a bit. And O'Connell talked about it a little bit yesterday, basically said, kind of borrowed the PJ Fleck line of the ball is the program. Yeah. And he said that's true for defensive players as well. If we get our hands on the ball, we have to come home with it. Right. So certainly going to be emphasized a lot this week. You want to kind of tread that line between focusing on it and not making players overly paralyzed by it.
I think it's ridiculous. You have to emphasize that with professionals at this stage of the season. Yeah. All right, now Josh Oliver turned up. Might have been holding it lazily. I don't know. I haven't watched it closely enough, but fumbles like that will happen. It's through the hands, no matter who you are, and no matter if it's into the awaiting arms of Joshua Palmer, right, or whatever it is. I mean, seriously, this is ridiculous that you have to deal with this at this stage of somebody's career.
Yeah, it's pretty elementary stuff. I mean, it's pretty early on when you're playing football, learning how to catch the ball, learning how to secure the ball. All of those things are pretty basic things. And I suppose players say once they get to a certain point, I don't need to focus on this as much. But yeah, then it becomes the thing where you have a professional team that says we have to get back to making sure we can catch the ball and hold on to the ball, which should not seem like it's stuff you have to reemphasize at this level. I suppose it's like anything. You do it long enough, it's human nature to get away from the basics. Yep. But
good point.
Certainly they need to reemphasize some of those things and figure out the way out of it pretty quickly.
Do you feel in any way off the last game and then the game before that at Carolina, the offensive line is on the upswing at this stage of the equation?
I think they have been better, yes. I think pass protection on Sunday it's still not great. I mean, none of this is like we're talking about the 1990s Dallas Cowboys here, but I think
I'll just take the 2009 Minnesota Vikings for starters.
That would be certainly that would be a threshold that would be closer to the Cowboys than where they are now. But yeah, it's not there, but I do think they had some times on Sunday. I was going back through it last night, and the number of times where I said, hey, Cousins has a pretty clean pocket here. Yeah. There were more of those, I thought, than there had been. And certainly with Chris Jones there, I didn't think he wrecked the game in the way that I saw Max Crosby do it last night against the Packers, or the way we've seen it happen with players of Chris Jones's ilk in the past against this line. I think they have been somewhat better, and it has allowed them to give Cousins a little more time. It's allowed some things to open up in the run game at different moments. So, yeah, I do think they're on the upswing, and I think the fact that they've kept the group they have, even when they signed Dalton Reisner, tells you that they're not feeling badly enough about it to flip the switch at this point. Let's stick with the group we have for now and see if we can get through at least some of this with that 5 that started the season.
And I heard Barrero ask Ben Lieber this yesterday on Bumper to Bumper and just paraphrasing, is why isn't Reisner playing? I mean, like, why did they trade for Reisner? Yeah. Or excuse me, why did they sign Reisner and forget what they paid him. It's not exorbitant, but nevertheless, I mean, he was still there on the street. Why is he not getting offensive run?
Well, Wes Phillips made a comment last week that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if he was reacting to the reaction or if he was hinting at something, but he said something about everybody wants the guy to play that is on the bench or is, the backup quarterback phenomenon, and then the most popular guy in town is the backup quarterback, and then sometimes there's a reason that player's not playing. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he talked about it in his press conference last Thursday. It kind of made you say, okay, maybe they're not feeling as great about the overall makeup with him in there as everybody would assume, just put him in, it's fine. There's, I think, other things they want to consider in terms of how people pass off stunts and how they play as a group together. I do think Ingram and Cleveland have played in a way that makes you think they've responded to the challenge a little bit.
Cleveland put some violent hits on Chris Jones.
Yes, he did.
I mean, just right in the ribs. And you could tell that it was part of the thing is like, hey, is we've heard a lot about Patrick and Travis, but we've also heard a lot about this guy too.
Yep.
And he's phenomenal. Let's just lay it out like that. He's phenomenal. But when you get a crack at him within the constraints of the rules,
leave your business card.
Make him pay.
Yep.
And let him feel it. You could just kind of tell that was an underlying tone.
Yeah. Yep. I thought they had some blocks where they tried to finish with a little bit of a remember me kind of shot in some ways. And I think that's probably not a bad thing for that group, because I'm sure when you have smaller linemen like they do in a few of those spots that everybody kind of talks about them through the week and says, you can push these guys around. And I'm sure the Vikings know that and probably were trying to respond with a little bit of, well, no, it's not quite as easy as you think. So, I do think incrementally that group has been better. Certainly worth watching how it plays out over the next few weeks, especially when the 49ers come in here. But I have seen a little bit of improvement there, yes.
With Jordan Addison, you guys talked about the drops, and that's a factor, and Jordan Addison is certainly part of that. But I also have watched a kid as a rookie that has improved greatly week after week after week as an option for Kirk Cousins. The team's going to show an immense amount of faith in Jordan. What's your amount of faith in Jordan Addison as potentially being premier frontline role now as Kirk's looking for targets out there?
Well, I don't think they have a choice at this point. I think he's going to have to play a pretty big role. I think the way Kirk talked about him after the game was notable. I mean, he basically said he's the real deal. He said he went so far as to say we hit on that pick. And basically, I don't need to see anything else to know that this is a successful pick. I think he has done a lot of things that we saw in training camp in terms of the way he controls his body on the field, the way he moves. I thought the route for the touchdown on Sunday was a great example of that, where he's able to get across on that deep crosser in the end zone, makes the play for the touchdown earlier in that game. I think he's going to get those opportunities going forward, and he's going to have to be a big part of this thing. I mean, KJ Osborne is going to get more opportunities as well. Hawkinson, yes. But
Hawkinson's the A topic.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, he needs to be better than he's been, no doubt. But I think Addison, Justin Jefferson gets like 26% of their targets. So those passes are going to have to go somewhere. I don't think this is going to become a team that runs the ball 35 times a game suddenly. So those targets will have to be distributed, which means Jordan Addison is going to get a large share of those, I would think.
If TJ Hawkinson is the A topic, which I totally agree on. Now, the drops, let's say those drops just end. He secures one in the end zone against the Chargers. Now suddenly we're not 1-4, we're 2-3. We can play those numbers games there. The drops on Sunday were frustrating indeed. One thing I've noticed, is there anything in terms of how he's running routes, how he's being deployed in the offense that is still potentially just not at its peak or needs to improve? And where I'm going with this is the explosive part of TJ's game. TJ is fast. I want to see TJ in the open field. And every time I'm seeing TJ catching the ball and getting opportunities, and he's making good plays at times, certainly, I'm not seeing TJ in the open field. I'm not seeing TJ and we just blew them away with a route. We blew him away one-on-one. He just cooked a linebacker or a safety. The matchup was advantageous and he feasted. I'm seeing TJ having to catch contested balls. I need him to catch those, but I'm not seeing explosive, high-end, best spot for him to flourish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good point because he is a guy. I remember this when they made the trade. You look at numbers with him and his ability to run after the catch is, he has better yards after catch numbers than most tight ends in the NFL. And I think some of that is probably how the Lions used him, giving him chances in the open field to get out and run after a 12-yard reception turns into 23 or something like that. But you're right. He has not had quite as many of those opportunities, and you wonder if that will have to become a bigger part of it because they have not had a lot of explosive plays in the passing game. And Josh Oliver gets the one at the beginning of the game Sunday, turns a short reception into a big gain until he fumbles the ball. So they want those things out of those tight ends. But I think Hawkinson, you're right, is going to have to be, he has that in his game, and they're going to have to find ways to deploy that.
Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling via Twitter, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Early week takes with the right to change them as the days go by up to the game. Will the Minnesota Vikings beat the Chicago Bears? How do they beat the Bears? Operating sans Jefferson, who again is going to miss at least 4 games.
Yeah, this one is tough because I think the Bears looked better last week. I was going to pick the Vikings to win this game because I think their defense can still do enough to control Justin Fields, but Justin Fields looked awfully good last Thursday night against a defense that is not elite, but has had some players, especially up front in Washington. So I think it becomes a tougher matchup, certainly without Jefferson, who has historically cooked the Bears quite a bit, especially down there. It makes it more difficult. I think they still have a chance to win this game. I think they will be able to produce. I am curious, I guess, to see how they adjust to this and if they are able to kind of find a plan B that can work for them offensively. I don't think that's easy to do without Jefferson. You have the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Taking him out of the mix is never going to help you on a base level, but I am curious to see if they can reinvent a little bit. And this is not the Bears defense with Khalil Mack or Akeem Hicks or Eddie Goldman or any of these types of players. This is a defense that you should be able to move the ball on. It's not a bad kind of get-right game, I guess, for this. So I think I'll have to see how it shakes out through the week. I think early on, I expect they could still win the game. It would not shock me especially if Justin Fields plays the way he did, if this one turns into a fight. And we'll have to see if they have enough offensive firepower to respond if it does.
What have you felt overall from what you see, what you know, or what you're being told of Byron Murphy Jr.'s season, specifically in the slot?
Yeah, it's been, I think, sort of up and down. You saw it on Sunday. He gets beat on the slant for the touchdown, and I think they have deployed him in a number of different ways. You've had to do that, but I would expect that they probably want to see a little more from him. In terms of just being able to hold up in coverage, especially as much as you have man coverage as a part of this defense. You need to see him be the guy that can kind of be the number one corner, especially when it's been Evans being hurt, Blackman being pretty inexperienced. Murphy's the one guy in this group that has played enough in the NFL that you should be able to count on him quite a bit. And he's had some moments where he's been fine, but I think they probably need a little more from him going forward.
Let me hit you with this name, N'Keal Harry. How about N'Keal Harry being on the field during the Chiefs game?
Former Bear.
Yeah.
Heading to Soldier Field. It's a revenge game for N'Keal Harry with no Justin Jefferson in the mix.
Yes.
You probably haven't had that in your Star Tribune notes yet.
Not
Mr.
yet.
Goessling, just keep it on the back burner.
Harry times for the Minnesota Vikings.
I think I do have to write a notebook later this week, so that note and that subhead may end up in there. We'll see.
There was a lot of fanfare.
That's Ben's way of just basically saying until he does something.
Yeah, correct.
You can't put him in the mix of no JJ. This one's going to change the whole thing.
I think the fact they had him up last week was somewhat for obviously emergency purposes, but I think they saw a special teams role for him.
Or they got bored with Tristan Jackson.
Yeah, I think there was some of that too. there's
Just
going
in
to be
case
opportunities for
Brandon
everybody.
Powell gets hurt on those jet sweeps that we finally brought out there as well.
First jet sweep of the season.
Yeah, I think Powell's going to be a bigger part of this thing too. So yeah, a lot of opportunities for a lot of people.
I'm
going
looking
forward.
at him. You're not. And Ben wears his emotions on his metaphorical sleeves, and his countenance is that of a towel.
Yeah.
And that's a compliment. That's just a very, very good thing to be in touch with your emotions like that. And I'm looking at him after the N'Keal Harry conversation, the Tristan Jackson reference, and whatever the last one was there. He's just kind of looking down like, I can't believe from when we began training camp to where we are now, the topics we're legitimately talking about with this football team.
Well, I mean, you look at that receiving group and you figure that's going to be the strength of this whole thing with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Justin Jefferson hurt.
No,
Hawkinson,
but it's the drops. It's Kevin O'Connell's cough.
Yep.
Wearing the emotions on his sleeves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's things 2.5, 3 months ago. There's no way we saw all of these drops coming.
Yeah.
The fumbles being drops and the drops being drops.
Right. All of the things that you expected you could count on. I mean, a lot of this, I think, before the season, I think their approach was going to be, we know we're going to score points because we have an experienced offense with a lot of first and second round picks and a lot of talent. And if our defense is marginally better, we are going to be competitive. I think the defense has held up that end of the bargain. It's not been great. It's not the 85 Bears. It's not the 2000 Ravens.
But it's gotten better.
It has gotten better.
Yeah.
And especially the way they played against the Chiefs on Sunday, if you say you're going to hold them to 27 points and that includes a short field for the opening touchdown, I think they probably would have said, yeah, we'd take that. We can score enough points on this defense to come out and win that game. The fact that the defense has, I think, in a lot of ways shown at least enough of the improvement to be competitive, and then you're not getting that from the offense. Yeah, it certainly has been a big surprise, especially for it to happen this early, and that we've been, I mean, really, this is not the first week, but the drops and the inefficiency and the turnovers and all this stuff, that just the new wrinkle to this whole thing is Jefferson being hurt.
Yeah,
it's just insanity. Speaking of insanity, in some respects, Marcus Davenport, just waiting for him to be on the field. He's on the field, and now he looks like a superstar because it's against the Panthers in some respects, but he has that productive coming out performance or big debut as a Viking. What do you think he looked like against the Chiefs to follow that up? I saw moments where he had to peel himself up off the turf after some of those plays. So clearly this ankle or foot or whatever it is still ailing him in some respects, but part of that improved defense, having him in now 2 games in a row. What did you think of Marcus's performance on Sunday?
I thought he did a lot of good things again. I mean, I think there were moments where he had pressures that you just weren't seeing them get before he was back. And
Patrick Jones popped on a couple of plays
he did.
too.
Yep.
For really the first time I've noticed it this year, where he was right at the ankles of Patrick, who got rid of it.
Yep. Yeah, he did have a couple of pressures. I was, again, going back through it last night, I had Patrick Jones in my notes, I think, more than I have this year.
I didn't notice it until I watched it back yesterday either.
Yeah, he had a couple where he's kind of, swirling around the quarterback. And
he beat the right tackle nicely twice.
Yes, he did. So Davenport, I think, has helped that whole mix. And I'm with you. I don't think he's 100% because you still see him limited in practice. You still see him listed as questionable. I think it's still something he's trying to work his way through with that injury. But the fact that they've been able to get, number one, the number of snaps out of him the last 2 weeks that they have, and number two, the amount of production they have, certainly has helped the whole thing. I think it's overall the pass rush has been more effective as a result of him being there. And I think we talked about it last week. He has made a bigger difference than I expected he would. I mean, the degree to which they look different with him out there is more than I expected it would be. And I think it's a credit to him.
Don't you think it's the ultimate complimentary thing? It's like Davenport can have 9.5, 10.5, 11.5. Daniil's going to have a bunch of sacks. Yeah. But it's like when you have the certain 2 or 3 out there, it's over the course of time, what they know will have to be done by most teams in certain situations should free the others to do what they do, you know?
Yeah, and you add those guys to a team that most of the time is bringing more than 4. I mean, they are, I think, number 1 in the league in terms of blitz percentage, and they were still not afraid to do it, spend 5 or 6 a lot of times against Patrick Mahomes, who typically, canonically, you do not blitz Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody says, no, we're not touching that because he's going to burn us. And they said,
wow,
we can still find some ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think overall, I mean, they didn't get torched by any of that stuff really in a way that, I mean, he made a couple plays, certainly, that he gets out of the pocket and throws back over the middle. And some of those vintage Patrick Mahomes things that nobody else, number 1, can do, or
Side
number 2
arm.
would even try. Yes, the sidearms.
A lot of sidearms.
Yes, all of that stuff. I think he talked about it in quarterback. It's like being a shortstop that Turner double plays where he picks up the skill to do it. But overall, the fact that they blitzed him to the degree that they did and didn't get beat as much as you might expect they would by it was, I think, it showed it can work. It showed they can make the whole thing, make the aggressive approach not come back to bite them. It also makes it one of those that you look back on at the end of the season. If they, wherever they end up, you say that was a winnable game. And if the offense is more efficient, that performance on defense stands up better than it did.
You are spectacular. Thank you very much for the conversation. See you out there soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, PA.
Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling via Twitter, and listen to him later in the week with a bumper to bumper with Dan Barrero. Trevor Plouffe on the Minnesota Twins and their playoff A Lot in Life about 40 minutes from now, and we'll be right back to KFAN.
Time now for the Vikings The Fan, presented by the Minnesota Lottery. Play the new Vikings scratch game for a chance to win up to $100,000. Vikings assistant coach Mike Pettin joins PA after Leos on The Fan.
Time for News du Nord, brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park. CanterburyPark.com. Poker, blackjack, table games all year round. And bingo. Bingo on Tuesdays. What is today? Today is Tuesday. Go to CanterburyPark.com for all event details, including bingo at The Casino at Canterbury Park. We'll start here with the news of the morning. Covered it with Goessling, and many opinions will be thrown out throughout the day and beyond as the Minnesota Vikings have to adjust. Tom Pelissero reported it earlier today. I still, as of now, haven't seen necessarily anything official from the team, but the Vikings do indeed plan to put Justin Jefferson on injured reserve with the hamstring injury, and that means he's out at least the next 4 games, which means the Bears this weekend, Niners in prime time, the trip to Lambeau, and then at Atlanta. So if everything goes well over the next 4 weeks, Justin Jefferson would be able to play again as of the Saints game at US Bank Stadium on November 12th. That would, of course, be if he's completely healthy. The team's 1-4, and they want to take their most important asset and take care of said asset. So as more comes out regarding JJ, and BA is going to talk with the head coach tonight as part of X's and O's with head coach Kevin O'Connell. We would typically replay that. It's live on Wednesdays, and then you'll hear it on Thursdays, 9 to noon. We'll get more intel as it comes from the team on Justin Jefferson, but it totally sucks because he's awesome, leading the league in yards, I think 3rd or 2nd in receptions, 3rd or 2nd in targets.
Yeah.
Another beautiful year for JJ that has been interrupted with his hammy.
And nobody wants Vikings fans first and foremost, but then fantasy football people and stuff like that. Nobody wants to operate without Justin Jefferson,
Right.
Because
Like chopping oats.
when when he does get the rock, it's fun, and when he does score, it's fun. He's polarizing in a very, very good way. However, I must concede, I crave new, and I crave something I have not seen, and specifically if it's dilemma related, either working through it or watching others work through things at the very highest level. And that's what this is.
An offense without JJ.
Right. And there's a side of me. First and foremost, I love calling games the Soldier Field. It's one of my very, very favorites. So to be there for that. Now, there's no JJ, but we're going to see things consistently and repeatedly that we have not seen. And personally speaking, that excites me.
And as you and Brandon in New Mexico via the text line, very excited to see N'Keal Harry starting this Sunday against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
The secret weapon that
He'll be active.
nobody knew. Well, yeah, absolutely he will. But Jordan Addison, that's the guy I'm looking at right now to step into that role and seize it, Jordan. Looking
I'm
good
on
so
TJ
far.
Hawkinson. And I don't care what deal TJ got. I don't care what the guarantee is.
Yeah.
The money is spent. He is at this stage of the equation. Now, Addison's catching him. But Hawkinson is the greatest overall the field threat this team has at this moment right now into this Bears game off his equity and matchup related scenarios. Ain't no linebackers or safeties covering Jordan Addison. And you can take advantage of things with TJ Hawkinson. So I'd like to see a couple of games out of the next three of like 7, 125, and 1. Maybe mix in it just like, wow, they're doubling him. Kirk high-pointed the ball like he did to Justin in the Buffalo game, and TJ's coming down with it first down. That's his 8th reception for 136 yards, and the Vikings lead by 5.
I would love that, as a matter of fact. Monday Night Football, not the most interesting football game. Can't say I loved it, other than potentially the final result, as the Raiders beat the neighbors to the east.
Play action to the right, over the middle. Picked off by Spillane at the 30. Near sideline 20. Spillane with a stiff arm, and he swung out of bounds inside the 10. That throw was right to the arms of the linebacker. Looked like he was the intended receiver, and he's got the Raiders set up inside the 10-yard line with their second pick in as many weeks.
Raiders radio, 17-13 the final. Raiders beat the Packers. Jordan Love looked absolutely hideous last night, PA. 16 of 30, $182 through the air, and 3 picks, including the one you heard there.
I think you said this before I had watched a fair amount of him. Man, his arm strength is really good.
It is.
I mean, he does have a cannon for an arm, and I just never really knew that about him. But on the game-sealing pick, I mean, that's a very hard throw to make that he made heading to his left. Well, I mean, granted, he underthrew the receiver, where, I mean, if you're going to miss, you don't want to miss because it's game over scenario.
Right.
But, I mean, you got to throw it high enough so that the receiver has a chance to maybe do some damage like that. Pass came up short, but still rolling to the left like that and kind of stopping and then just firing it with your gifted right arm. I mean, and he threw it hard. I mean, that was he has a very strong arm.
Packers fans would be like, well, at least our guy left the pocket and bought himself time to make a throw into the end zone on the final play. Whereas our guy, unfortunately, took a sack. But all jokes and bitterness aside, Jordan Love isn't playing well right now. They couldn't get Aaron Jones back onto the field last night. Head coach LaFleur was pissed about it. He needs him. He loves him. But A.J. Dillon is 76 yards and a score, but the offense is just, it's not good enough right now to compete at any level. As Jimmy Garoppolo, he had his own problems and mistakes, getting absolutely harassed. It felt like he was taking sacks. He was sacked 3 times, all of them on third and manageable situations where the entire thing broke down. Kenny Clark is flexing on him. Quay Walker, something to watch. I think he was ruled out with a knee.
Wow.
So some trouble in Green Bay for the Packers right now as they fall to 2-3. Raiders rise to 2-3.
Yeah, and how good are the Detroit Lions? I mean, I'm just looking forward to the Lions hooking somebody that's
Crown
super
'em.
high end. Yeah, crown them in the division, but I'm going to stick by what I said in the offseason, that they can get to the NFC title game. I don't like them to get to the Super Bowl, but the Detroit Lions can end up in the NFC championship game. That's just the respect I have for the way that team has been built over the last 3 years. And I don't really know who they have coming up that's super formidable, but
I don't have their schedule right here.
But I look. Well, they beat the Chiefs on the road, all right, and that was. I mean, beating the Chiefs are very beatable in September, October, and before Thanksgiving. You can beat them, but if you make mistakes, they're going to make you pay because they're poised. So, with that said, they caught the champs on the very first game of the season
with bad receivers
off the Super Bowl season, and still working younger receivers in game number 1. But man, the behind the 49ers, these Lions are just I love them. I mean, I just really respect that team.
I'll say this: we actually will learn a lot coming up here and Baker Mayfield ain't much, but they're at the Bucs and then at the Ravens next.
Oh, that's good.
Now, Lamar has the chance to screw up games. He has a chance to take over games and be an MVP guy. Love
Great
Lamar.
tests.
But massive road test for the Lions 2 weeks in a row coming up.
Right, because, I don't know. I know they just played Carolina, so Adam Thielen is having a good season, but, like Mike Evans and Godwin, with the way they're working it, Evans is in complete beast mode right now. Excellent challenge for their secondary and their pass rush. And then after that, you talk about finding a way to low-key get ready for Jalen Hurts, play Lamar Jackson and play that contained game with him a certain way, and then maybe that sets you up to one day play Philadelphia for significantly more chips than the regular season chips.
Braves beat the Phillies last night on a crazy double play from center field. I think it was a 8-5-3 double play. I think something like that. It was third baseman handled it to first.
Yeah.
They win 5-4, even the series. Dodgers are in trouble, man. They're down 2-0 to the Diamondbacks. They win 4-2 last night. And then Twins. 3 o'clock today, my friend. Sonny Gray on the mound versus Christian Javier. 4.56 ERA over the course of the season. Ended the year with a 6-inning shutout. That was just the first time he hadn't given up runs since June 15th. So Christian Javier can be got, or will he reverse regular season trends like we've seen in a few cases in the baseball postseason?
And that will be discussed with former Twin Trevor Plouffe about 15 minutes from now. Around the corner, if interested, let me make sure my man didn't text me. If interested, talkbacks and or some texts on this JJ news, and also what you expect from the Twins today. And if you're going to the game, what excites you about the game? The text line, Bradshaw and Brian, thank you, 64686, and the talkbacks, free iHeartRadio app. We'll do that next segment, walking up to Plouffe at FM 100.3 KFAN.